Have you ever seen a scientific figure that looked professional but still left you wondering what the data actually mean? That often happens when the chart does not match the data. In life sciences, the wrong chart can hide variations, exaggerate effects, or make results harder to interpret. In this video, we will look at 12 essential chart types for biological data, from bar charts and box plots to heat maps, volcano plots, survival curves, forest plots, and PCA plots. By the end, you will know when to use each chart, what mistakes to avoid, and how to make your figures clearer, more honest, and publication ready. Let's get started. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Chart choice is not just about making your figure look nice. It's a scientific integrity issue. A misleading visualization can hide distribution, conceal outliers, and make weak results look stronger than they really are. For example, a simpler bar chart with a mean plus standard error of the mean may look clean, but it can hide whether your data are bimodal, skewed, or driven by just one outlier. And reviewers notice this immediately. Top journals increasingly expect raw data points, clear sample sizes, and visualizations that honestly represents the data. So the first lesson is simple. Your figure is not decoration. Your figure is evidence. Before choosing any chart, ask these four questions. First, what is the structure of your data? Are you working with continuous measurements, categories, time series, spatial data, genomic coordinates, or networks? Second, what biological question are you answering? Are you comparing treatment groups, showing a distribution, tracking progression, finding correlation, or visualizing flow? Third, how many observations do you have? If your sample size is small, show the individual points. If it is large, use box plots, violin plots, histograms, or density plots. And fourth, who is your audience? A journal reviewer wants rigor, a conference audience wants instant clarity, a grand panel wants a compelling story. The key rule is if your sample size is small enough to plot the raw points, show them. Now, let's walk through the 12 chart types that every life science scientist should understand. These includes bar charts for group comparison, box and violin plots for distributions, scatter plots for correlation, line charts for time course data, heat maps for matrix patterns, volcano plots for omics data, survival curves for time to event studies, forest plots for meta-analysis, histogram for distribution shape, waterfall charts for clinical response, Sankey diagrams for flow, and PCA plots for high dimensional data. Each chart answers a different kind of scientific question. The mistake many people make is choosing a chart because it looks familiar. Instead, choose the chart that matches the data and biological question. Let's start with the most common chart, the bar chart. The bar charts are useful when you want to compare values across categories such as gene expression across treatment groups, Western blot, densitometry, colony count, ELISA cytokine levels, or species abundance. But here is the danger. Bar charts only show a summary. They do not show the full distribution. Two groups can have same mean but completely different underlying data. That is why, especially when n is less than 20, you should overlay individual data points. Never let the mean hide the biology. If you care about distribution, box plots and violin plots are much better than plain bars. A box plot shows the median, interquartile range, whiskers, and outliers. A violin plot goes further and shows the shape of the distribution. This matters in life science because biological data are often messy. You may have skewness, outliers, bimodal populations, or subgroups that a mean value completely hides. Use box plots when you have at least around 10 observations and violin plots when you have enough data to show the shape clearly. And always report your sample size because in science, how many is just as important as how much. Scatter plots are the best choice when you want to compare two continuous variables. For example, mRNA expression versus protein abundance, IC50 versus biomarker level, cell size versus fluorescence intensity, or biomarker level versus clinical outcome. Each point represents one observation, and together those points reveal correlations, clusters, and outliers. The important thing is not just whether the trend looks positive or negative. You should report Pearson R or Spearman Rho, include the p-value, and ideally show a confidence band around the regression line. A good scatter plot does not just show two variables move together, it helps you judge how strong and reliable that relationship is. Heat maps are powerful when you have metrics like data, such as genes by samples, proteins by conditions, or cell lines by drugs. Color becomes language of the chart. In life science, heat maps are widely used for RNA-seq expression, proteomics abundance, drug sensitivity, chip-seq signals, and microbiome data. But heat maps can also be misleading if they are not designed carefully. Always include a color scale, define what color means, and for log-fold change data, use diverging scales centered on 0. Clustering rows and columns can reveal patterns that would be impossible to see in a table. A heat map is most useful when it helps the audience to see the structure in complexity. Now we come to one of the most important plots in omics, the Volcano Plot. A Volcano Plot combines two ideas in one figure. The x-axis shows the effect size, usually log two-fold change. The y-axis shows statistical significance, often negative log 10 adjusted p-value. This means the most interesting genes or proteins often appear in the upper left and upper right corner. Larger change and strong significance. Volcano plots are used in RNA-seq, proteomics, metabolomics, ATAC-seq, and GWAS style analysis. The key warning is use adjusted p-values, not raw p-values, because omics data involve thousands of tests. And label genes because they are biologically meaningful, not just because they have a smallest p-value. Line charts are ordered for time points. They are perfect for growth curves, enzyme kinetics, pharmacokinetics, gene induction, tumor growth, bacterial OD600, and cell viability over time. The key feature is the slope. The slopes tell you biological story. Growth, decay, response, recovery, or resistance. But do not use a line chart just because it looks clean. Use it when the x-axis has a meaningful order, especially time. Always show error bars, state your sample size, and consider a log scale for exponential processes. A line chart is not just about where the data are, it is about how the system changes. Kaplan-Meier curves are used for time to event data. That could mean overall survival, progression-free survival, relapse, bacterial clearance, or time to defined clinical endpoint. The step-like shape is important. It reflects actual events and censoring, not a smooth mathematical trend. When presenting survival curve, always include the number at risk, the log rank p-value, and hazard ratio with a 95% confident interval. This chart is especially important in oncology and clinical research because it communicates not only whether an event happens, but when it happens. In survival analysis, timing is the result. Forest plots are used when you want to compare effect sizes across studies, subgroups, or trials. They are common in meta-analysis, clinical group analysis, and systematic reviews. Each line shows an estimate and its confidence interval. The pooled result summarizes the overall effect. The vertical line usually represents no effect. If a confidence interval crosses that line, the result may not be statistically significant. Forest plots are valuable because they show both consistency and uncertainty. Instead of just asking, does the treatment work? A forest plot helps us ask how strong is the effect, how precise is it, and is it consistent across studies. Before choosing a statistical test, look at your distribution. Histograms and density plots show the shape of single continuous variable. Is the data normally distributed? Is it skewed? Are there outliers? Is it bimodal? Are there multiple subpopulations? This is especially useful for flow cytometry, fluorescence, cell size, sequencing read depth, tumor size, and ELISA absorbance. A histogram can reveal whether a parametric test is appropriate or whether you should consider transformation or non-parametric method. Your statistical test should follow your data distribution, not your preference. Waterfall charts are especially useful in oncology. Each bar represents one patient, usually showing percent change from baseline in tumor lesion size. Patients are sorted by response, so you can immediately see who responded, who had stable disease, and who progressed. This is more informative than simply reporting an overall response rate because it shows the full patient level pattern. When using the waterfall charts, clearly state the response criteria such as RECIST 1.1 and label threshold for partial response and progressive disease. This chart is powerful because every patient remains visible. Sankey and Alluvial diagrams shows flow. They are useful when you want to show movement between stages, groups, pathways, or outcomes. In life sciences, they can show clinical trial patient flow, metabolic flux, immune cell lineage, differentiation, microbiome, taxonomic composition, or gene ontology enrichment flow. The depth of each band represents quantity. That means viewers can instantly see where samples, patients, cells, or molecules are going and where they are being lost. The main rule is clarity. Too many flows can quickly become visual spaghetti, so only include the flow that supports the story. PCA plots are used when the data have many dimensions. For example, RNA-seq data may involve thousands of genes. PCA compresses that complexity into 2 or 3 principal components. Samples that are similar cluster together. Samples that are different separate. This makes PCA useful for quality control, identifying batch effects, and exploring treatment separations. Related methods include tsne, UMAP, MDS, and PLSDA. But remember, PCA is exploratory. It helps generate hypotheses, not prove them. Always report percentage of variance explained by each axis and do not overinterpret distances. This slide is your practical decision table. If you are comparing groups, use a bar chart with dot overlay or better a box or Violin plot depending on sample size. If you are showing a distribution, use a box plot, Violin plot, histogram, or density plot. If you are studying correlation, use a scatter plot. If you are analyzing gene expression matrices, use a heat map. If you are working with omics significance, use a volcano plot. If you have time to event data, use Kaplan-Meier curve. If you are showing clinical response per patient, use waterfall chart. And if you are analyzing high dimensional clustering, use PCA, UMAP, or tsne. The key message is start with the biological question, then choose the chart. Now let's talk about the tools. In R, ggplot2 is one of the strongest options for publication quality figures. Complex heat map is excellent for omics heat maps. Surminer is useful for survival curves, and enhanced volcano is built for differential expression results. In Python, Seaborn and matplotlib are widely used for statistical plots. Plotly is great for interactive figures, and ScanPy is essential for single-cell workflows. For lab-focused workflows, GraphPad Prism remains common for dose-response curves, survival analysis, and statistical testing. FlowJo is standard for flow cytometry. Cytoscape is useful for biological networks, and ImageJ or Fiji is essential for microscopy analysis. The best tool depends on your data, your field, and how reproducible your workflow needs to be. Now let's look at the mistake that can weaken an otherwise strong study. First, using bar charts that can hide raw data. Second, using unadjusted p-value in omics. Third, failing to report sample size. Fourth, truncating the y-axis on bar charts. Fifth, choosing wrong statistical test because you never checked the distribution. Treating technical replicates as biological replicates. 7. Using 3D charts that distort perceptions. 8. Failing to label the color scale on heat maps. These may seem like small design issues, but reviewers and statisticians notice them quickly. Good visualization is not just beautiful, it is transparent, reproducible, and honest. A great figure communicates your science before the reader reads a single word. That is the standard we should aim for. Choose your chart based on the data and the biological question, not just aesthetics. Show raw data whenever possible. State your sample size. Use adjusted p-values for multiple testing. Match the chart to the distribution and label your axis carefully. If this video helped you understand how to choose the right chart for life science data, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a colleague, student, or lab mate who prepares scientific figures. In the next video, we will look at statistical testing for biologists, how to choose the right test for your data. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.